I am going to read from my book, A Guide to Bars and Nightlife in the Sacred City. I would like to add, let's get Evan drunk tonight.
Yes, let's.
And we'll just see where this takes us. The first story is called The Time Travelers of San Francisco. The camera caught you unaware just after you'd applied your makeup, dressed like a 1920s gypsy performer, a steampunk vagabond with an artsy streak, eyeing the minibar and smoking in the hotel suite I rented for us all to meet and get into costume before heading off to the annual Time Travelers Ball. We were a motley assortment. Chris was channeling J. Edgar Hoover down to the pistol under his jacket and the women's underwear in his pants. Alba was a 17th century witch about to be burned at the stake, her face pale. Such a perfectionist, she'd even scented her hair to smell like smoke. Deborah was a colonial wife from a Jamaican plantation. She was working through some issues by taking on the identity of the people who had oppressed her family. I wonder now how that worked out. Alex was a monk and Emily was Joan of Arc. That's two women who were going to burn. Alan was a knight in shining armor, completely inaccurate historically. He would be mocked mercilessly all night. This was the last moment before it all went wrong for us. I took that picture of you before we all piled into the limo and were driven across San Francisco to the Old Mint. We didn't have to wait in line because I knew a guy who knew a guy. We skipped right past the World War II soldiers and the 1960s go-go dancers and the 1950s housewives and the Roman legions and were let inside by a pair of Dutch botanists manning a velvet rope. We separated at the Absinthe Bar and never got to dance. I followed a Venetian courtesan up to the balcony and traded stories about the sacred city of Prester John, leaning in closer and closer until I brushed her hair away so that my lips could reach her ear. Her hands drifted onto my thigh. I saw you down below on the ballroom floor, waltzing with a tall young man in a tuxedo, sporting a goofy grin. Even from this distance, I could see that he wasn't one of us. It was obvious in the poor fit of his costume and the sincerity of his smile. I watched you spinning and went on with the seduction at hand. I cannot resist a woman who carries poison in her glove. If I had known that you would never come up the balcony because you were afraid of heights, if I had known you would briefly fall in love with this boy, if I had known how difficult you would find it to let go of someone who loved you unreservedly, if badly, if I had known that the scorn I felt for him would come between us like a trench in war because you too felt judged. If I had known these things, I would have put aside the delights of Venice during the Crusades. I would have run past the inventors of the locomotive and down the stairs filled with orphan chimney sweeps. I would have spun into the waltz and walked you off the dance floor in a straight line, taken you outside, and given you a cigarette. I would have laughed with you at the folly of our hearts and the way they lead us down false paths and garden steps lined with roses that will not live through the night. I would have let you land gently from the heights of this world I should never have invited you into and left a trail of pebbles between us on solid ground so that I could find you again as you wandered through the offices and taxis where you really feel at home, restlessly traveling from home to home, job to job, man to man, but never looking up. I would have done this for you, instead of climbing to the next balcony with my courtesan, and then the roof, rising ever closer to the constellations. And now, for all the space between us, there is no room for a second chance. The Time Travelers of San Francisco. Thank you. Let's read To Look Inside. Can I pull the microphone off the stand? Is that a thing I can do? All right. That might give me a little more. Yeah, let's do this thing. To Look Inside. She lies sleeping on white sheets under red blankets. Her raven hair is spread across the pillows, but of the man there is no trace. This is a tricky moment. She'll be angry if I don't clean the room promptly every morning, but she'll be angry if I wake her. Her anger is dangerous. Even when she sleeps, there is something of the snake in her. I take a deep breath and remind myself that fear is normal. If I didn't want this, I shouldn't have volunteered. I can't help comparing her hair to mine again. They're both dark. They're both long. But that's the only resemblance. She's pale. She's svelte. She's curved in just a way that draws the eye along the body. She's toned and shapely. I have so much to learn. He was good looking, this one, but he must have been smart too. She never brings them here if they're not smart. I caught a glimpse of him last night as they opened the first bottle of wine. He smiled at me, and something in it was sad, resigned. I almost think he knew what was going to happen and decided to do it anyway. I take another deep breath, pull out my dust cloth, and tiptoe into the room. The sunlight has preceded me. I must be quiet and fast. I do the shelves first, the farthest thing in the room from her. I dust in time to her breaths. I spray the cloth first, then wipe the surface, careful not to touch the glass figurines from Venice or the puppets from Japan. Then run the cloth along. Good. Easy. I look back, and she hasn't moved. When the man saw me last night and smiled, he wasn't flirting. At all. I don't know how I'll ever learn to do what she does. Someday, she says, she'll teach me. That's where this is going. But sometimes I think she's lying. She always lies. Outside the room, a cat jumps down a staircase and lands with a thud. Move! Don't linger! I go to the nightstand next, the closest thing to her head. I shiver as I lift up the alarm clock. It hasn't been wound in over a year at least. And I dust underneath. The crystal decanter with I don't know what inside. It looks like water, but nothing is so simple here. It's heavier than it looks. I pull back after that. It's not finished, but my hands are shaking. I'm too scared to do it right. Better that I get it half done and hope she's satisfied, since she's still asleep. Yes, that's my best chance. I tiptoe over to the dresser. The cat jumps again, and I nearly scream. The dresser's easy. One long, big surface, such beautiful wood. Someday, I will have furniture like this. Someday, men like that one, men of all kinds, men who have never looked at me twice, will come to my house and try too hard to flirt with me, and will fall under my spell even before they've drunk my wine. Someday, it will be worth it. All this will be worth it then. Besides, what else am I going to do? It's too easy to grow old and alone. My mother taught me, without ever once saying so, that life is cruel to the kind. Done. That's everything. Except, oh God, I can't do that. I can't. And yet, I'm tiptoeing over to the cabinet. The special one with the silver hinges and the golden lock. The one I have been instructed never to touch. But I have. She's sleeping. I can't do this. If I open it right in front of her while she's sleeping, she'll kill me if she wakes up. She'll kill me. Or worse, none of my dreams will come true. But I can't help myself. The lock is easy to open from the outside. I can't turn away. I can't stop. I'm too afraid, and I want it too much, and if I were wise enough to leave well enough alone, I wouldn't be here. Gently, in time with her breathing, I open up the cabinet door, and I see them, in their little glass bubbles, frozen, alive, in clear paperweights. I see the men. The one from last night is there, looking around, crying and hugging his knees. She's already put a label beside him, Antonio, poet. A poet! She's wanted a poet for a long time, but they've never been good enough. I suppose he's good enough. He sees me and pounds on the glass, but it doesn't make a sound, and of course I'm not going to help him. I wouldn't know how. Roger, the CEO, also pounds the floor of his glass prison, and Donald, the machinist, stares. They all stare, wondering what is going to happen next. wondering how they followed the beautiful curves of a woman across New Orleans and into a prison of glass, one night's passion, all it took to turn them into collectibles. Their eyes all follow me, my every move, their mouths imploring. I take a deep breath, take it all in. I can do this. I can do this. I close the cabinet door and lock it softly. I turn around, my breath catching, to see if my mistress has moved. Thank God she's still asleep. I look at her curves again, her glorious curves and her magic hands. She and I have the same hair. Someday, this will be me.
Thank you.
Okay. The funeral of Abbot Casparus. The one disadvantage to holding the mic like this is turning the pages. So hope I can keep my perfect record here. The funeral of Abbot Casparus. It is traditional for monks of the Cistercian order to create some item for the public good. For centuries, the Abbey of Stift Highland Crews has manufactured bricks for the local people to use. The Carthusian Abbey produces cheese. The monks of the Scormont Abbey make beer. In the morning and at night, they chant hymns and Bible verses in complicated, ecstatic harmonies. Monks are only human, and I was in attendance at the Brabant Abbey for the funeral of Abbot Casparus. I pretended to be a spiritual tourist, jaded and cynical, when in fact I was a pilgrim. I pretended to be decadent, when in fact I was eyeing celibacy with the same ardor I had once reserved for powerful-seeming women in bars. Please, I asked silently, show me a depth and strength that I can believe in, rather than one more wall made of crumbling resolve. I was there, the monks sympathetic but bothered by me, when they buried their old and worldly abbot and brought out casks of brandy they had made by hand as an act of devotion to God. I was there, uninvited, in the corner, and not a drop touched my lips as they passed around the goblets and told stories in French of the wisdom of the dead. I saw the tears and I heard the laughter as man after man took enough solace to make his legs wobbly and his eyes weak. I was the first man to hear the bells calling for night services. I do not know who sounded it. I watched them look around and try to stumble to their feet. I watched them, mumbling in French, until Brother Karsten made a decision and pointed to the crucifix mounted in the banquet hall. I saw them all gradually turn to face it. I saw them, as one, begin their drunken plain chant. I heard their voices, in perfect symmetry, recall the words of their faith, and I wept because it was even more beautiful than it had been the night before, their intoxicated harmonies filled with simple love. And I wept because I knew I could never be one of them. I left the next morning. They gave me bread and cheese, and went back to Brussels, where I found a bar, drank the brandy made by monks, and told lies once again. This story, that music, is the only thing you really know about me. How much time we got left? I'm good? All right. Does it have to be short, or can I flex my wings a little bit?
What do you say, guys?
All right. All right.
That was.
Let's do feeding time. I'm going to put this one back for that. All right. Our final story from A Guide to Bars and Nightlife in the Sacred City, available for sale in the back or by buying Evan a drink.
36. I need help.
Feeding time. The homeless guy asks us for money so he can buy a sandwich. Says he hasn't eaten in days, and Jay says, "Come on, man, if you want booze, just tell us you want to buy booze." Jay likes to think he's a real straight talker. And the guy goes, "Please, you can't let me get any hungrier." Just like that. Just like there's some kind of rule that says it is illegal for a man to get any hungrier than this. And I remember thinking, wow, that's a straight talker. So it's Saturday night, and it's not like we have any place special to go because the best party is being thrown by Ted's ex-girlfriend, and we ended up on the wrong side of that breakup. And Jay says, okay, man, how about we buy you a sandwich? You want that? We'll buy you a sandwich. But then we get to watch you eat it so we know you were really that hungry. And Ted says that's juvenile, like making him dance for spare change or something, but I'm thinking, hey, at least he gets fed, right? So the old guy nods, and Ted says, okay, and I ask where we're going to go buy this sandwich. And Jay, now he's all magnanimous. He's just not going to buy him a dog from a streetcar. He says, we'll go up 2 blocks and over one to the gourmet sub shop that's open late, and we'll get this guy anything he wants off the menu. Says it like he's buying him a fucking house. I mean, come on, it's just an overpriced sandwich, set you back $10 on a drinking night. Shit, that's what you got an attitude about? So we start walking up the block, and I'm already kind of pissed about this because the corner of Alexander and East has bars everywhere, and the crowds are big, and there's a lot of sweet University of Rochester girls, and here we are walking around with this dirty old homeless guy. We're getting all the wrong kind of looks. So the point is, yeah, I wasn't paying attention to a word the guy said when he started to mumble because I'm thinking I could be getting hooked up right now. But then Ted says, son of a bitch, did you just hear what he just said? And James says, what? And Ted says the old guy just perfectly articulated the Riemann hypothesis. And I ask what that is, and Ted tells me to shut up because the old guy's still talking. And it sounds like gibberish to me. I don't think he's even saying words. And it turns out I'm right because Ted says he just gave the formula for Boltzmann's transport equation. Which I think I studied in high school, but I don't remember what it is. But Ted's in the sciences, makes big money at a research lab, and now Ted's just getting all really excited as the old guy keeps mumbling, and he's not even checking to see if we're paying attention, and we weren't, but now we are. And I guess it's okay, because by that point we'd passed all the good bars, and hopefully no one remembered us. Next is Ernst Mach's wave equation, which sounds impressive, and Ted said he got right. And then the old guy looks around at all of us and says, I'm so hungry. It's been so long. Where did you learn all that? James asked. And Ted is suddenly all into this and told the guy if he could give us more good science, we'd give him a bag of chips, too. Hell, give him another sandwich. And I asked, right, what's your story? But I didn't offer any food with it, so he doesn't answer me. Instead, he starts going off on some other stuff, and I read Ted's copy of The Elegant Universe, so I get that he's talking about quantum physics string theory stuff, and at first I'm thinking, okay, he read the book too. But then he starts hitting the math, and Ted just freaks, and James tells him to calm down, dude, but Ted's just, shut up, and starts chiming in like he's in church. That's right, yes, and James is telling him, dude, man, calm down, but Ted's saying, do you know how advanced this is? There's a chapter in my thesis on this part, and won't let anybody talk. And I'm thinking, geez, what's this guy's story? How does he know all this shit? How did his clothes get so worn, and why hasn't he shaved in forever? Because people who know this stuff don't, you know. And nobody who's that scruffy poor ever gets a chance to learn anything. I'm not that kind of math guy, but Ted is, and now James is totally into it. He thinks we've got the world's smartest hobo or something. Like, that's something to be proud of. He's such an ass sometimes. He didn't even want custody of his son, and the rest of us were going, James, come on. It's your kid, man. We burst into the sandwich shop, and Ted doesn't even want to give him his food yet. He's all, wait, what about the square root of pi or something? But James is saying, no, man, he gets a sandwich. And then Ted remembers his promise and just tells the guy behind the counter, who would have kicked us all out if 3 of us didn't look like money, to give this guy anything he wants. And so the homeless man just points the stuff on the menu and gets like 5 sandwiches, the meatiest ones they've got. Like one has meatballs, the other's some kind of Italian club, and one's got chicken and avocado and stuff. And he starts ripping open a package of kettle-cooked chips while the sandwiches are being made, and Ted gets him a Mountain Dew, and he sits at a table like it's the first time he's sat down in his life, and he shoves everything into his mouth. Ted wants to keep talking science, but this guy's a serious eater, and by the time the first sandwich comes, there's already crumbs all over his beard, and he's not stopping. He rips into that sandwich, and I think I see him wince because his teeth are bad, but he just keeps going. And James is saying how sad it is that we don't have a camcorder to record this on, but he takes out his cell phone and starts recording it, even though he keeps complaining that the picture quality is going to suck and he should have splurged on the phone with the high resolution. For like 20 minutes straight, this guy's just packing it in, and it's obvious his mouth is in pain and his stomach hurts, but he just isn't going to stop. And he's finished 3 sandwiches and is working on a 4th when Ted starts saying, look, we'll buy you whatever more you want if you just start talking again, because I want the good stuff. And everybody in the place is just watching us. And the homeless guy raises the second half of the 4th sandwich up to his mouth, and that's when the shaking starts. His whole body starts shaking like epilepsy all over, and he's fighting with himself, still trying to raise the sandwich to his mouth and take another bite, but he can't because he's trembling so bad, and then his fingers go crazy and he drops it, and there's tomato and salami and roast beef all over the floor, and he lets out this wail because he's lost it, and then his face goes pale and he doubles over and falls off the chair and is just shaking all over the floor. And Ted's shouting, what's wrong? What's wrong? And James is still recording this, the fucker. And I'm thinking, Jesus, maybe he really hasn't eaten in that long. And seriously, none of us even thinks to call an ambulance. We were just all so caught up in this because it was the sandwich jockey behind the counter who called the hospital, but this was downtown on a Saturday night and traffic was hell and there was no place for cars to get out of the way, and I guess there was already a bad accident on the inner loop, and it took them maybe 20 minutes to get there, and after the first 10 minutes, well, he just stopped trembling. He just stopped. I don't know if he was dead on arrival or if he died in the ambulance, but we didn't try to do CPR or anything. We didn't know what to do, and touching him was... I'm not proud, okay? He's still a John Doe. Nobody's claiming him, and his fingerprints and dental records aren't on file or something. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what happened, and I'm not sure where we went wrong. Should we not have fed him?